Hello students, good evening to you all. We are going to discuss today about an important concept called the kingdom monera. You know that R.H. Whittaker has classified all living organisms into five kingdoms, and kingdom monera includes all those organisms which are prokaryotic in nature. These organisms which are prokaryotic, that means these organisms do not have a well-defined nucleus. They do not have well-defined nucleus, or in other words, their DNA is not covered by a nuclear membrane. Moreover, these organisms generally live in those habitats which are moist, moist habitats, such as they live in moist places, such as deep oceans. They also live in snow where the temperature is less than 0 degrees centigrade. Sometimes they also live in those places like we have hot water springs. And they even survive in those extreme, what we call it as, acidic soils, etc. Besides their diverse habitat, these organisms also show other types of, growth, such as parasitism. Parasitism, that means they act like, parasites for their survival, and many of these monerans do parasitism. Some of them do heterotrophism, that means they also do autotrophic nutrition. Some of them prepare their own food through autotrophic nutrition, and some of them are symbionts. So they exhibit a variety of habitats and also a variety of food habits. Let us talk about the general characteristics of kingdom monera. What are those 7 or 9 important characteristics of kingdom monera? These organisms basically have unicellular organisms. They are all unicellular organisms. Second thing is these organisms have a ribosome which is of 70S type. They got 70S type ribosome. They got 70S type ribosomes. Third thing is these organisms show diversity in their habitat. They show great diversity in habitat. And the next thing is these organisms show their food habits or food habits include all kinds, that is autotrophs, and they also have heterotrophic nutrition. They also have heterotrophic mode of nutrition. When we say heterotrophic mode of nutrition, they depend on others for their food requirement. This can be like, they can depend on dead and decaying things. In that case, we call them as saprophytes. Sometimes they depend on other living organisms for their survival. We call them as parasites. Most of the parasites, they, at the cost of other organisms' survival, they get their food, and we call them as parasites. And some of them also associate themselves as symbionts. Symbionts are those monerans which have a mutual relationship with another organism, and that's how they lead their life. Besides this, these monerans reproduce asexually. Monerans reproduce asexually. They reproduce asexually by a process called binary fission. Or sometimes they also do budding. So this is how they reproduce. Another feature of these monerans is they have a cell wall which is made up of peptidoglycan, and generally this is rigid. So cell wall, they have a cell wall. They have a cell wall which is made up of, cell wall is rigid and made up of generally a substance called peptidoglycan. And another feature of this kingdom Monera is they have no membrane bound organelles, no membrane bound organelles. They don't have membrane bound organelles such as endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi, lysosomes, chloroplasts, etc. And these organisms also show great amount of diversity in their habitat as well as their metabolic reactions. Monera are so diverse in their metabolic activity that they can survive any kind of conditions. So these are the salient features of kingdom Monera. In this kingdom Monera, we have an important group of organisms called bacteria. Bacteria are very microscopic unicellular organisms which basically have a nucleus which is not well defined. They don't have their DNA covered by a nuclear membrane. Besides this, they have got a simple, what is called body organization. They have a cell which is covered by a, envelope which is separated into 3 layers. Normally they have 2 important layers, that is cell wall, below which we have a cell membrane. In many of these bacteria, we also find, another extra covering called glycocalyx, also called capsule. This capsule gives protection to the bacterium against the host defense mechanism. What is important in this Monerans is, these bacteria are both, we have bacteria which are both harmful as well as beneficial bacteria. This bacteria, they have got a simple, cell wall which is made up of peptidoglycan. Over this cell wall, we have an external covering called glycocalyx. Inner to this cell wall, we have a membrane which is called a semi-permeable membrane, similar to the one that we see in all living organisms. So, besides this, on the external surface of bacteria, we find a lot of whip-like structures which are all, tube-like flexible proteins. We call them as pili, we call them as pili. This pili help the bacteria in transferring the genetic material from one bacterium to another bacterium. Sometimes this pili also help in attachment to the substratum. Besides this pili, some bacteria have another structure called fimbriae. Even this fimbriae also helps the bacterium to attach onto a suitable substratum. So let us go into the details of this bacteria. Bacteria are, as I said, they are microscopic, prokaryotic in nature. 70S type ribosome is the salient feature. They have a locomotive structure called flagella, and they come in different shapes. Let us take up bacteria as an example under this category of organisms called Monerans. Most of the organisms in Monera are bacteria. These bacteria are ubiquitous. Ubiquitous means they are present everywhere. They are adapted to various conditions such as soil. They live in water. They live in deep oceans. They live in low temperature areas such as polar regions. They even survive in hot water springs. They also live inside the gut of many ruminating animals. So we can say that the bacteria show great amount of diversity in terms of their habitat. Not only they show habitat diversity, they also show nutritional diversity. That means these bacteria exhibit a variety of nutritive habit such as autotrophic nutrition, which means they prepare their own food from simple substances such as carbon and hydrogen, and they derive this carbon and hydrogen from atmospheric CO2, sometimes from hydrogen, sometimes from ammonia, etc. Sometimes these bacteria are also capable of using sunlight and prepare their own food with the help of some pigments called bacterial chlorophyll, and we call them as autotrophs. So that's we normally call them as photoautotrophs. Besides this autotrophic nutrition, some bacteria depend on others for their food requirement. We call them as heterotrophs. These heterotrophs depend on external organic substances for their survival. Among these heterotrophs, we have got three categories. One is called saprophytes. Saprophytes are those which depend on dead and decaying stuff for their survival. The second category is called parasites. Parasites, in fact, depend on other living organisms. At the cost of other living organisms' survival, these bacteria derive their nutrition. We call them as parasites. Many diseases are caused by bacteria, both in plants, animals, as well as in human beings. And the last category of nutrition they show among heterotrophs is symbiosis. In symbiosis, the bacteria associate with higher plants for mutual benefit. Let me tell you an example of the most important, agriculturally important bacterium called Rhizobium. This Rhizobium bacterium lives in the nodules of legume plants, and they fix the atmospheric nitrogen, and in return they get the carbohydrates from the plant in which they reside. That's about the nutrition. When we talk about bacteria shape, as I said, they are microscopic, unicellular. They come in different shapes. Some of the bacteria, they look spherical in shape, and we normally call them as cocci. Some bacteria are rod shaped, we call them as bacilli, and yet other set of bacteria are comma shaped, and we call them as Vibrio. The most popular, most notorious bacterium, the Vibrio cholerae, is comma shaped. Some bacteria look like a spirally coiled shape, we call them as spirillum. Most of these bacteria do locomotion with the help of a structure called flagellum. Though they are unicellular organisms, sometimes these bacteria form colonies. When they form a group of two, we call them as diplococci, cocci-shaped bacterium. Sometimes they also form a chain, they form a chain, and in such case, we call it streptococci. They not only form two-dimensional colonies, they also form three-dimensional irregularly shaped colonies. Sometimes they produce a bunch of grapes, we call it as staphylococci. Similarly, those rod-shaped bacteria also form a chain. In that case, we call them as streptobacilli. These are the shape of the bacterium. So bacteria, they have generally on their surface three layers of covering. The outermost layer is called dicocalyx, which gives protection to the bacterium against the host defense mechanism whenever they are parasites. Below this dicocalyx, they have a rigid cell wall, and this cell wall is made up of peptidoglycan. This cell wall is totally different from the cell wall that we see in plants. We also come across certain bacteria or monirans which do not have any cell wall at all. We call them as mycoplasma. They are also called pleuropneumonia-like organisms. As they don't have any rigid cell wall, they keep on changing their shape. These PPLO or mycoplasma are considered as the smallest living organisms in this world. Please remember, students, these bacteria are the first formed organisms. They are the most primitive organisms. They have both beneficial ones as well as harmful ones. Let us talk about the classification of these bacteria. Bacteria are classified into three subkingdoms, that is Archaebacteria, Eubacteria, and Cyanobacteria. Archaebacteria are those bacteria, as the name says, archaea means very, very primitive. These Archaebacteria are capable of surviving in extreme climatic conditions or extreme habitats. They can survive in salty areas where the salinity is very high. When they survive in salty areas, we call them as halophiles. Some of these Archaebacteria can even survive in those soils where the pH is very, very low as well as the temperature is very high. We call them as thermoacidophiles. Thermoacidophiles also include those bacteria which survive in hot water springs where the temperature is more than 100 degrees centigrade. Some of these bacteria, which are Archaebacteria, they can even survive in marshy places, and in that case, we call them as methanogens. So this is about Archaebacteria. What makes this Archaebacteria so special, or their capability to survive in extreme conditions? They have a cell wall which is totally unique, and this cell wall we call it as pseudomurin. Not only they are unique in terms of their cell wall, even the cell membrane is a bit different in having a branched chain fatty acid in their cell membrane. Not only they have their uniqueness in the cell wall and cell membrane, their sequence of nucleotides in their rRNA and tRNA is also unique. The second group of bacteria are called Eubacteria. U means true, as you know that U means true bacteria. They have a normal cell wall which is made up of peptidoglycan, and they also have a locomotive structure like flagella. Certain bacteria belonging to U bacteria, they don't have cell wall, and we call them as mycoplasma. They are also called PPLO. In other words, plural pneumonia-like organisms. Due to the absence of cell wall, these organisms, they don't have a definite shape and they keep on changing their shape. So therefore they are also called jokers of microbial world or jokers of plant kingdom. These eubacteria include all kinds of nutrition. They have autotrophs, preparing their own food. They also have heterotrophs, that means they depend on others for their food requirement. Autotrophs are those which derive their nourishment from basic substances such as carbon and hydrogen, and this carbon and hydrogen they obtain from atmospheric carbon dioxide and hydrogen from either H2, H2S, or sometimes even from ammonia. Those bacteria which are heterotrophic in nutrition, these bacteria obtain their organic substances from their surroundings. Most of these heterotrophs they are decomposers, that means they depend on dead decaying stuff for their survival. We normally call them as saprophytes. Some of these bacteria also undergo parasitic relationship. That means they grow on other plants, animals, and human beings. By depriving their survival, these organisms survive. Therefore, they are called parasites, and they also have symbiotic association. These bacteria, which are symbionts, they associate with higher plants such as legumes, and they will have a mutual relationship in this association. For example, legume-rhizobium interaction is very useful both for the bacterium as well as for the plant. Some of these examples for eubacteria are Clostridium and Rhizobium. The last group of bacteria are called Cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria are very much important in terms of evolution because these bacteria are the first ones to ever produce oxygen during photosynthesis. We normally call them as oxygenic photosynthesizers. This ability they obtained because of the presence of pigments that they possess. These pigments include chlorophyll A, similar to the one that we see in higher plants. They have other pigments like carotenoids and phycobilins. Of course, you may wonder, being a prokaryotic cell, they don't have a chloroplast, but still they store these pigments in special structures called chromatophores. What is special about cyanobacteria is not only their evolutionary significance they also fix atmospheric nitrogen. There are some special cells called heterocells which are meant for converting atmospheric nitrogen into ammonia. Then some of these examples for cyanobacteria are Nostoc, Anamina, and Oscillatoria. So let us summarize this kingdom Monera for their economic value, for their both harmful as well as beneficial role that they play. Most of these bacteria they are used in industry for manufacturing many industrial products like antibiotics, acids, industrial acids, and they are also used in fermentation, etc. Of course, we also know that these bacteria cause a lot of damage to the food. They bring about a lot of diseases both in plants, animals as well as human beings. Thank you very much.